Hello and good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us at this morning's first panel discussion on the second day of the 2025 Totems. Our topic for today is software-defined vehicles and the context for them in India. This is a somewhat nebulous term, so we're going to dig into what exactly that means and what changes for the average car buyer. I'm delighted to have with me Riti Nageshri, Head of Business Operations at Mahindra Electric SUVs, Mr. Neeraj Rajmohan, CTO at Ultraviolet, and Mr. Sachin Sanghi, Principal Architect Automotive at Google Cloud. I'm your moderator this morning, Jamshed Avari. I'm the Senior Associate Editor of Technology at Acko Drive and our sister publication, Acko Byte. Thanks everyone for being here and for giving us your time. On the topic of SDVs as a concept, Ritik, if I can start with you. What do you think that means for the average buyer? Is this something that motivates people to buy, or is it not even something that you talk about in such specific terms?
SDV as a term, I guess, is not much of a marketing jargon. It's more from an OEM perspective, a term used across OEMs and their suppliers. For customers, it's more about the benefits that they get from this architecture. So you won't see SDV, a term which is more broadcasted to the general public. But what it means is that, of course, the users are getting used to the smartphone ecosystem and the ways of life on a smartphone, and that's what OEMs are also getting towards. We all are moving from maybe horsepower to gigaflops. So yeah, that's a very quick thing about what it means.
Great. And same question to Neeraj. How do you approach the customer and what does it mean to them?
Sure. So, first of all, thank you for having us over here. And
Pleasure.
one of the things that we dabbled with, and very early on when we unveiled our vehicles last year, was how do we provide software, in terms of going beyond the vehicle as hardware, to a customer. And it's often seen as something that why isn't it always packaged with the vehicle? Some of these questions come up, and so we've learned some interesting things through our actual experience with customers, that customers value these things if you're able to clearly demonstrate what value it brings to them, right? So some of the features, if we just call them software features, it wouldn't really work in the market, right? For example, one of the things that we introduced was called Violet AI. Now, Violet AI is all of the capabilities of the vehicle that goes beyond the vehicle operating system. Of course, it's from the sensors and the data that is collected on the vehicle, but it is packaged as something that brings you useful insights into your riding behaviors, into other things that the customer is doing. So while we call it a software-defined vehicle, the feature that is actually marketed and sold is something that is of a higher level abstraction and sold to the customer.
Yeah. I think AI is something we're going to come back to with everyone over here because that's such a huge topic right now. But for now, let me ask Sachin, what exactly is Google's play when it comes to software-defined vehicles or automotive in general? Because I think the average customer is very used to Google Maps in the car, and Android Auto is pretty much everywhere. It's standard now. So what is the larger picture for Google?
Yeah, good morning, and glad to be here. So from we already heard about what it means to the buyer, but I'll just like to say that SDV as such is really, there are three things to look at it. One is today's most majority of the customers are tech buyers, and they're looking for advanced technology. They're looking for personalization, and they're also looking for improved safety, right? So in order to be able to provide these features, there is a backend that is required, which has got to do with upgrading the hardware with compatible software. So we have a play in there at Google Cloud. Renault is a company that completely does that. But then when it again comes to the customer, you brought up Android Auto and Google Maps as well. That's very much part of what we also call the software-defined vehicle offering from Google Cloud. We bunch it together and call it Google Automotive Services, GAS. So right from how do you develop software-defined vehicles and all the major tech components, tech stacks that you need a lot of different kind of hardware. And again, when we talk about AI, we can see how AI is very critical to software-defined vehicle.
So now a question for everybody. What is the customer most interested in? What are they responding to the best? What are they demanding? And what are they willing to pay a little more for when it comes to a higher variant?
So, in terms of monetization, and that to monetization post sales, it's very new concept in India, especially. It's not started yet. I'm not seeing that. Apart from connectivity services, this picked up a lot in the West, and Rivian is a good example there, where it's kind of, I guess, released 500 odd OTAs, and 96% people have actually subscribed for it. So it is working out as a business model. But your question, like what exactly will make them buy or what's that, it all ends up to the benefits, of course. So, for example, I am today off-roading and I want the suspension to be set for that. And it's not my daily trip. So what all, if I can get an OTA just for, everything that works for that off-road situation, the steering, the ride, and I can just switch it on for that one day. It's just an example, but it's something that I would love to have it. So yeah, we'll have to think about these scenarios on how we can, first of all, through so many sensors and so much data that we have today, make sense out of it. And then accordingly, we personalize it. And the personalization is infinite with the SDV architecture. So that's the possibility with it.
Yeah. Same question for Neeraj.
So I think from our point of view as well, like Sachin had mentioned, right, it comes to safety and customization. So one of the things that we did last year was that for all of the vehicles in the fleet, we introduced a new safety feature called traction control and another one called dynamic stability control. Now the hardware allowed us to sort of build the software capabilities over time, validate, test it thoroughly, and roll it out to all existing customers. Now this has never been done before, through an OTA for any vehicle till date. And we were the first ones to, do something like this. Usually it requires additional hardware or capabilities, right? One of the other companies that has been talking about something like this is Tesla, right? Where they talk about full self-driving capabilities. Of course, there are limitations to what is possible on the older generation hardware and things like that.
Yes.
But the point is, can we introduce something new, which is actually very functional to a customer, right? So this is one part. The other part is customization, right? And on the customization front, what we have been able to do of late is provide analytics of, let's say you own a F77 motorcycle. You've been riding it around for, a couple of 1,000 kilometers. How does your behavior stack up with respect to the other, 60 million odd kilometers that have been covered by other riders, right? How does your brake usage, and we are able to tell you that, your distribution of front and rear brake usage indicates that maybe you should bias your behavior towards the front brake because this is a sports motorcycle, you'd get better stability, better control. So we're able to do these things now with all of the data that is collected from across the fleet. And this is starting to provide very useful insights to customers.
Thank you. So for Sachin, can you tell us a little bit about the specifics of what you're working on? How do you decide, or what data have you collected about what customers are looking for, and anything specific to India and Indian customers?
Yes, certainly. So we recently released a report for Mobility 2030 in India, and it's a very India-specific report, and Google Cloud and BCG got together to carry out this report. So one of the things that we found out in the report is what are the things customers are willing to pay for when it comes for connected services, right? One thing that came out, I think it was on number 2, is in India, customers are willing to pay for a service which offers them park assist. So if you're going somewhere and you get a parking spot where you need, people are actually willing to pay for that. The other is around safety services, right? They want to know if through their mobile app they're able to know what the status of their vehicle is. So whoever is driving, then they know that the vehicle is here. So these are some of the things that they're willing to pay for. What we found that they're not very necessarily very excited to pay for services is like the driver score. Today, most responses told us that they would like to know that, but if you ask them to pay for it, they won't. So that's one side of the consumer side of the data that we've collected. And it's a report, I think, that's available on our website.
What I've gathered is ADAS is what they're willing to pay for the most, with the lane keep and the ACC, the AEB, and these features that ADAS comes with. So, and then next was, of course, on the commercial side, it's all the telematics. So that's the data. But I think where we are going, and we have this for the first time, I guess an Indian OEM has come up with zonal architecture. So, the SDV architectures in auto has kind of followed what computing had. If you remember the old age computing, I'm sorry, a computer engineer myself. So we used to have client-server architecture that used to speak of, where client used to be very fat and heavily loaded earlier with all processing happening there. And slowly it happened to be the opposite. So we moved all the computation towards the server. And that's what's happening now in automotive, where it all started with ECUs having a lot of computational, and it was all basis, every function ECU, and used to have 150, 200 odd ECUs, a lot of wiring, each connected, interconnected, and now it's moving to a zonal where the ECUs are very light, very less. They just do basic stuff, and it's arranged in terms of physical location. There are zonal controllers that are made, and all the compute is happening with that one central high-performance chip. So, with that, it's very easy to abstract all your hardware and all your software, and you can introduce new features that, as he was saying, without disrupting all the hardware.
So speaking of introducing new features, I touched upon the upsell earlier, but a lot of what you said sounds like you're planning for subscription offerings or one-time purchases with limited validity. Can either of you talk about that sort of plan and how the Indian consumer has responded so far?
So with this, it's not just subscription. That's one part of it, yes. You can activate, deactivate, you can introduce new features, etc. But right now, what we all are doing, and the examples that we hear, is product improvements that we understand from how customer is behaving, and we can push product improvements, we can fix bugs, we can make things more safe. So there's this product R&D learning also that we are gaining. But yes, this is another layer of subscription, and though that's, as I was saying, in India it's not started yet. We'll have to watch and wait on how this is coming up. We'll see.
So in terms of subscriptions, one of the things that we found is that consumers, the moment you call it a subscription, it becomes seen as a very negative thing, right?
Yes.
It's a recurring payment, and it gets people start to question it, especially if it's something as basic as connectivity and things like that.
Yeah.
So the way that we see it is actually, again, like I said earlier, it's about value. What is the value to a consumer, right? So if we are talking about preventive maintenance and diagnostics, and we're actually able to deliver this, which is that we tell you we're able to detect there's a change flag, or we're able to tell that your tire pressure is changing, and constantly remind the customer via their app or their connected experience, or we're able to say that it looks like you had a fall, and let us know if you want your vehicle checked out. So there's higher levels of value that we're providing, and that can be monetized, but not base level connectivity. At least from what we've seen in India, people aren't very comfortable paying for
Yes.
a capability that may someday provide value. It must be demonstrable value to a consumer. So that's what we've seen.
And now let me come to the big AI point that we all want to talk about. Starting with Sachin, can you tell us from the industry perspective, did you see this coming? How rapidly did you have to pivot, and what exactly has changed about your roadmaps now for what the customer wants?
Yes, so really AI is really changing so rapidly. So I think where we are today, DeepSeek R1 is really the new disruptor. It has disrupted AI. So you're right, there are a lot of roadmaps that are changing, but I think it's a great innovation. So I think, see, there are certain folks who definitely saw it coming. That's why we have what we have today. Now, if you let go of the people who thought about it and worked on it, I think we all must have seen it coming. We just didn't realize it. As we started to speak to our phones and change the multimodality of interacting with technology, right? Moving away from mouse and keyboard to voice, image, video. So I think we must have seen it coming, maybe just not as explicitly. In terms of how our roadmaps have changed, really not that much at Google. Google, Mr. Pichai talked about that Google is an AI-first company. About 6-7 years ago, he had that statement that Google is an AI-first company. So we have a platform called Gemini, and Gemini, now we are at 2.0, recently got released. And it's all multimodal. And we keep up. For example, you can deploy like a DeepSeek on Google infrastructure because it's a model. So our AI is an open AI. So I think what will play out for everyone is, as long as everyone will have to keep their platforms open, just because of the disruptions that are coming.
Yeah, thank you. Neeraj.
So for us, actually, machine learning and AI is sort of coming into every aspect of the business. It's not just, from an end consumer point or a vehicle point of view. What we see is that over the next couple of years, the entire development process is going to change, right? In terms of how code is generated, how, systems are integrated together, how they're validated. In fact, even in terms of 3D design, in terms of PCB design, I think all of that is going to get affected. Timelines will shorten because of your ability to, bring in, rational thinking in a form, right, with models like R1. And that's just the beginning, right? That's just the tip of the iceberg. Now we're starting to think about, these models deployed in larger data centers and clouds. So that enables capabilities for customers to, reach out, have customer support at scale, which doesn't feel like you're waiting on a call and, having a conversation with a bot or an agent. And then comes on the vehicle, right? Having smaller models and packing in more compute on vehicles so that you can actually load up some of these models and be able to do more interesting things, like even evaluate data from cameras in real time, or interact with riders or drivers. So it's all across the spectrum, and we're going to see some very exciting things in the market soon.
And Riti, of course, we've seen the recent launch of your Born Electric SUVs, and Maya was a big part of that. Can you tell us a little about what the customer experience will be?
So just to give a context, Maya is, of course, in Sanskrit it means magic, and we're literally bringing magic to the cars. We have the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8295. It's the fastest automotive brain, so to say, that we have in our cars. And the kind of operations, it's 50 trillion operations per second. So what's all these compute about? Of course, AI is one of the big leg. And I would say AI has, as they've said, there are various layers. It can be for the basic things, and it can be for the more safety critical things as well. And so for example, it can, we have this in-car camera, and it's largely for driver occupant monitoring system. And it reads patterns of your face and all the, not just the drivers, even the occupants. So, we have this another use case of if you have your kids driven by a chauffeur and their safety, because you get that data like your CCTV, and you even kind of read the exact expressions and what's going on and build over that. So apart from driver detection and safety, it's also passenger safety built in. Plus, apart from that, there are road conditions. The range plays a very important role in the electric vehicles, and predicting the terrains, bases your navigation, the weather, where you are, your earlier driving patterns. All of this can help in better range predictions.
So then a question between the two of you is, how much tech is too much tech? Do you think that some buyers are maybe intimidated when they see like the huge screens or touch interfaces? Is there anything that puts them off? Do they prefer? How do you address the segment that wants something simpler? And I think particularly for Neeraj, a lot of biking is about the connection between man and machine. That there's a lot of the personality that goes into it. So where is the balance for you?
So this actually happened, right? So there was an interaction that I had with a customer in Milan in Italy, where we had our bikes recently at the Milan motorcycle show, right? Now, of course, there's a translation element to this, but we were talking about, radars and cameras, and one of our concept vehicles was shown there, and I could see the customer getting visibly more anxious and, annoyed. And what he thought was that the vehicle is taking over control and driving for itself. And I was like, once I realized that, I had to tell this potential buyer that, listen, the vehicle is not taking over. It's augmenting your capabilities. It's helping you from a safety point of view. It's warning you if there's an approaching driver from behind who's accelerating at a very rapid pace. If you are in someone else's blind spot, it's going to be alerting you. So once that was clearly explained, right, what is it, how is it benefiting the rider, then it starts to, come across in a manner which is, okay, I will take up this new technology. It's not intruding, it's not, making me redundant, it's not taking away my riding experience, but it's actually helping me be safer or have a more fun, pleasant ride. Then it's, it's a viable thing. But again, it's not sold necessarily as just technology, because the moment you just talk about technology, then it goes, people start imagining certain things. So it's actually the capability that the tech enables. That's what we speak about.
I should have actually said person and machine, not specifically man and machine, not limited to that. But Riti, you spoke about the in-cabin camera also. So do you have any experience or feedback from early customers about privacy?
Okay, that's a great point. So privacy and, there's a trade-off between how much you can augment and help them and versus privacy. And so we obviously have the best privacy security layers. We use QNX BlackBerry, which is quoted as one of the most secure OS. Our systems are highly encrypted. The networks are highly encrypted. So having said that, still people trust. It's about trust, and you need to, we trust the banking systems, and we kind of know that, our data is safe there. And they too use the same BlackBerry, by the way, security layers. So we are using the best of that. I get your question. There is a little bit of, people might feel intruded, but we make sure that we explain them the use case And we also give them option to not have it if they find it intrusive.
Okay. And Sachin, from your perspective, how are you architecting for data security, and what pain points do you think customers have in this regard?
Yeah, that is indeed a very important aspect, right? Data security. For data security, there is a tech portion of it that takes care of it, right? So the stronger the lock, the more innovation is for those people who are trying to break that lock. That just works everywhere. But today, especially today, with all the computing and all the technologies that are there, I think one of the ways that we look at data security is also to detect where a threat is going to come from. So we've got solutions for companies, and let's say even for a cybersecurity of a connected vehicle, it can be applied that if there is any threat that is detected that someone is going to try to come in. So we start with there, and then comes the portion of, okay, you have a network, you have to protect it, but then you also have to make sure that it cannot be misused by people who have access to it. That's the second portion of data security, cybersecurity, or protecting privacy. And I think there is a lot of work that has been done. So all the data that comes in, we have these tech solutions which also are validated for everyone by third parties as security certification. So you have to protect it from the folks. There's a massive database of all of us leaving an iOS footprint and an Android footprint. But we inherently trust them, like you said, that if I download an application from iOS or Android, it's going to be safe because it's following the security measures. So you have to let people know, you have to make them aware. And regulations, again, play a very important role to make sure that it is protected from every party.
In fact,
please.
sorry, I just add,
Please.
we have an Israeli company, I won't name it, but we hire them. And have you heard about this concept called as chaos monkeys?
Yeah.
From Netflix, where they actually put in all the failure, they inject failure to make sure the system doesn't break.
Penetration testing.
Yeah. And so they have these chaos engineers which create chaos in the system. And I would love to be in that kind of a role. But so the company's job here, this audit hacking company, is to hack through in every possible way our systems. And they have like the military hacking levels. And we have passed them. So it's pretty safe, I would say. By the way, we are the safest car with BNCAP highest ever scores. So not just structural safety, we have all data safety, safety in all forms.
Great. And open question for everyone. Can you talk about the SDV ownership experience? Whether a person knows that they have an SDV or not. They've just bought a high-tech car, is what they think. So now, what are the things they might not have anticipated, or what are the things that you found that you need to prepare them for at the time of sale? Things like software updates, how long can they expect that? What can they expect to change? Do you have any insights?
I think people are used to phones so much. They know there's an update. They know there's an install. So there's a download, install, and it's done. There isn't much of a learning curve here. As you said, it's not about too much technology. It's never about too much technology. It's just how easy and seamless you make it for the customers. So that's how we should do it. It's so intuitive for them, and they're used to doing this, that I don't see this as a separate learning, so to say. But in fact, it helps them post-ownership. Especially on the service, maintenance, there's a lot of things now that can happen over the air. The entire diagnostics is remote. So I would just say just more and more convenience.
Sure. So I think, the way that we are also seeing it is very similar in that people are used to a smartphone and, the way that they perceive some of these things, as long as they're intuitive enough, right? But what is changing is the overall experience of owning a vehicle. And because earlier it was just about, once you drive the car and or ride the vehicle and you're done with that, it's the end of the trip. But now it extends into your home beyond that, right? Because you're able to see statistics, you're able to see the status of your vehicle, you're able to see the location of your vehicle, right? All of these things start to come in, right? And you're able to diagnose problems right there, right? So now the experience is extending and your vehicle is becoming a deeper part of your, offline life that way. So I think for that, that's the interesting part. May not be sold as a software-defined vehicle, but it enables these experiences.
Yeah, so how people are experiencing SDV is again that everyone is experiencing smartphones. But I think what is the way that people will realize that now I own a software defined vehicle is when the upgrades will start to come, because you own a vehicle anywhere from 3 to 5 years, and the first day you get it, you have all the cool features. But in our phones now, none of us remember or none of us realize how WhatsApp is getting updated. We've not seen Gmail getting updated, right? But it is getting updated. We don't even realize Google search has gotten updated. But we are now all getting used to probably the AI summaries that a Google search provides when you search anything on it. So the way we are going to experience software-defined vehicles is that's what it's going to become. You'll have a common app on the screen in here, and you will just get used to every 6 months when you thought, oh, this is not working right, you'll see a update pop up that just keeps training you for using it more efficiently.
So a lot of tech companies have gotten into cars or have tried to get into cars. And it's potentially maybe more of an American concept because people just spend so much time in their cars and make them parts of their personality. But what is the Indian context in that vein? Do you have ecosystem ambitions much larger than the cars themselves?
What do you mean when you say software companies getting into, in terms of
software and
suppliers
hardware,
or?
like we've seen, for example, Xiaomi launching a car. I mean, it started out as just a tech company. Apple famously has been
But couldn't crack it.
reportedly developing a self-driving car. Now, self-driving is something that I don't think India is going to be ready for.
Yeah.
So, I suppose what I mean is tying the car into your larger tech life.
Yeah. So while we say it's smartphone on wheels and all that, the key difference between a smartphone or a software app development versus a vehicle is the functional safety. And there you can have a blue screen, it's okay. Here you can't have an accident. So it's a different thinking, different mindset. And that's why it's not easy for any software company to just start making cars. Xiaomi and Huawei, they've done an amazing job there, but it's taken a while. So they've been doing this for years and trying to crack it. Now, yes, there are a lot of learnings that come that automotive can take from the overall smartphone industry and ecosystem and communities and standardization is the core of it. Plus, if you have that as the base, you can, of course, have a lot more players come in with new features, and you can open up, you can make it more expandable in terms of features and upgrades. You can scale easily, the cost is reduced, the hardware dependency, all of this is reusable. So the interoperability between devices. So of course, all of these are the smartphone jargons that now automotive is trying to adopt to. So yeah, there are learnings, but we should always remember about this, no accidents allowed.
Yeah, so I think for us as well, what we're seeing is very similar, right? In your smartphone era, you saw applications, you saw smartphones with newer capabilities getting added. But when it comes to the automotive context where safety is very critical, you need to have predictable, deterministic sort of programming and outcomes. And in such situations, it's not easy to just take what would be a similar application development and transform that into a vehicle, which is one of the reasons why it takes some of these companies, if they've been making apps and now they're trying to make vehicles, or they're making phones and then now they're trying to make cars, right? That being said, I think it's exciting to see some of them, make these transitions, but it also means that they're able to deal with a higher level of complexity, right? Which is what it actually takes to build any sort of safety critical or functional safety critical vehicle.
And for Sachin, I mean, Google products and services and cloud services is such a huge part of everyone's life. What are your thoughts on car integration with all the other Google properties?
Yes, so yeah, you're right. Google products, I'll just make a note about Google products. Now we have 7 applications, consumer facing applications that are 2 billion users each, right? Each of them. And they are used every second of every day and every part of the earth. When it comes to car, you talked about the ecosystem. I agree with you that it's not easy for a software company like Apple to start making a car. However, for software companies, it has become easier to buy these car companies, right? And Waymo is an example. It's been a couple of years now. It is a fully autonomous, it's a radio cab. You can summon a Waymo and it'll take you, and you can complete a ride. And now it's available in multiple cities in the United States. So the ecosystem on both sides is expanding. And the integration with software and vehicle is just inevitable. I think it is democratizing mobility. Earlier, when mobility started, it required some very unique skill, motor skills, ability, or it was very difficult to afford mobility. And I think we are at an era we are democratizing mobility, and that is why we'll have some enthusiasts left that will say that in my car I want a dial, not a screen. We all know such folks. But yes, the integration is just, it is going to be an ecosystem. Essentially, it's going to be mobility ecosystem, and the hardware will be one portion of it.
Okay. And I think we only have time for just quick closing remarks from everyone. Anything else you'd like to add?
Okay, one simple thing. So for us, the earlier days, we used to have an end date to SOP, the start of production. And now with SDV, just like any other software program or project, there's no end date to an SOP. It's a living being, and it's always continuous improvement.
Just to add on to that, we have something very similar, right? In Linux, you typically have versions that have long-term support, right? You're constantly building over it, adding capabilities, adding features, ensuring that it is secure to a large level. For us, the vehicles continue to be that. And we're constantly, so we have a control room where we're tracking, the entire fleet, the status, and if everyone's safe, if anyone needs support, and we're able to proactively, reach out to the customer in case, they ever have even a fall, right? So this is a very different kind of ecosystem and environment that we're building. It's different from, building vehicles and then handing it over to customer. It goes beyond that.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think that where SDV is leading us is now a famous term is the future is agentic, right? And which I think is quite true. So the Android Automotive now has an Android Automotive Assistant. I think the eventual mobility experience will be an assistant that is available with whom you interact in a multimodal, the interaction will be multimodal, by which I mean it will be, voice, image, videos, everything, just like we interact with everything. So we will all have an assistant in our vehicles, and that assistant will be a gateway to take care of all our needs of mobility at that time when we are mobile. If we are mobile and we need to do something else after we get there, that assistant will take care of that as well. Yeah, I think that's what I foresee.
Great. Well, thank you so much to our wonderful panel for sharing your time this morning and all your experience and knowledge with us. There's so many threads to pick up on here, and I look forward to many more dialogues with you in the future where we'll explore a lot more of these topics. So thanks to you guys, and thanks to everyone who came and who's watching online. And please enjoy the rest of the totems.
Thank you.